In terms of, you talked a lot about the different ranges of the compound annual growth rates that we could see with Bitcoin over time, and you gave different examples of what returns would look like in this range if it hits a sort of a smaller growth rate. And you went through all of these. You seem to be very convicted that Bitcoin is going to succeed long term. I remember this from the first time we talked. I was just wondering sort of where that came from, because I think it seems very obvious to people that are in this space, and to look at Bitcoin's sort of historical price prediction, just but at the same time, working in the world of traditional finance, you're speaking to a different audience a lot of the time. But a lot of people, I think, are going to look to you and say, where does this conviction come from? Why do you think Bitcoin is going to keep doing what it's doing? What makes you think that that will be the case?
Well, I think that it's always useful to look at history and to ground your expectation in history, uh, and just to assess. Okay, this would be less than what's been historically experienced. This would be on target. This would be above target. Then you just have some guideposts. But from a fundamental point of view, I have three legs of my Bitcoin valuation stool. The first leg is that it's the best savings technology around the world for everyone around the world. That's for individuals, for families, for businesses, for governments, for institutions of all types. It enables them to save their purchasing power across time and space in an asset that is weightless, fungible, divisible, universal, accessible, transparent, auditable, uh, really just so many different reasons. And it pertains to different people around the world in different ways. If you're in what Alex Gladstein has helpfully referred to as the golden billion, people that are born into the euro, the dollar, the Swiss franc, the
The yen,
Canadian dollar, the yen,
right?
then you have a wide range of financial services that are available: banking products, credit products, leasing products, certificates of deposit, medium to long term mortgages, business loans, stocks, bonds. But if you're in that other 7 billion folks, then your access to what some people in that billion might take for granted, such
Yep.
as the ability to own even Microsoft or Apple stock,
Yep.
is greatly curtailed, let alone having a broad suite of banking products. And so, even though people that are living within, let's say, some of the better performing fiat currencies that I just mentioned
Yep.
are also finding Bitcoin, many people that are living with the Argentinian peso or the Turkish lira or the Nigerian naira, or any number of the 130 or 40 or so different currencies around the world,
Yep.
are finding Bitcoin as a strong alternative to saving in either their local currency or saving in other tools like sheet metal or livestock, which are clearly inferior to saving in Bitcoin. And what you
Yep.
need to save in Bitcoin is a phone with an internet connection.
Yep. Yep.
And that's become a lot more accessible for many, many people around the world. And for those that are in places that even do have more liquid currencies, Bitcoin is still winning in terms of being by far the hardest asset in the world.
Yep.
Uh, not a growing supply. In fact, a finite supply that's mostly already all issued, 95%.
Yep.
And you can save a little or a lot. You can save periodically. It's highly liquid. It's got a lot of factors going for it. So that's leg number one of the stool. Leg number two of the stool is that in addition to being the best savings technology for people all over the world, Bitcoin is also extremely versatile. It's versatile in ways that are already established and
Mhm.
versatile in ways that are imagined in the future. Already established ways are all of the energy use cases being used to balance the grid in ERCOT, or recapture orphan oil well and natural gas well emissions, or landfill emissions in the case of companies like Vespine or Nodal,
Yep.
or being used by tremendously innovative companies like Gridless to build out microgrids in Africa through run of river hydro. But not only energy use cases and waste heat byproduct, which Mara is really leaning into and exploring,
Yep.
but also, of course, payments and remittances, and many emergent use cases as well, like e-gaming, SATS streaming,
Yep.
cybersecurity, and the idea of cyber domes that are protected by Bitcoin, I think, is going to be one of the likely going to be one of the most substantial use cases for Bitcoin over the course of the next 5 or 10 years, and will really, because if you were a company, why would you rather pay a third party to do penetration tests and to give you all of these audits and results to protect your cybersecurity, when instead you could own an asset that would protect your
Right.
cybersecurity by having a cyber dome? That seems like a much better, more rational approach.
Yep.
So the second leg of the stool is all of the versatile use cases which add to the demand for Bitcoin, underpin its value as a savings technology, but are not directly driven by the savings technology thesis. And then the third leg of the stool, which I think is uh, one that's just very, very important to bear in mind, is that we're measuring the results in something that has no upward bound, which is to say, we're measuring the CAGR in US dollars, yen, euro, sterling, or whatever else the local fiat currency is that we're talking about.
Yep.
And when you think about where we are, in my opinion, with the long term indebtedness, not just of the funded debt, 37 trillion, but also Medicare, Social Security, the state pensions, which are largely underfunded,
Yep.
many municipal pensions in a similar situation. And not only those in the United States, but a similar discussion even in Canada and Europe and
Yep.
Japan, China even. I believe that it's very likely that we're going to see a significant increase in the quantity of money. And already people are reporting it in the recent days, M2. But
Correct.
recent days is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the big picture.
Yeah.
And so if you zoom out and you say, okay, Bitcoin is super good technology for savings, it's incredibly versatile. And for purposes of our discussion, we're measuring the returns in something that has no ceiling, US dollars,
Yep.
in terms of quantity, then I think that you can get your arms around a very very constructive outlook for the future price performance. And so with all of that, if you then say, okay, I'm going to size a program like this to perform really well at the 10th percentile of historical returns,
Yep.
or at the 25th percentile of historical returns, which is to say 75% of historical periods have been better, or 90% of historical periods have been better, then I think that that implies a robust design from a financial engineering perspective.
You are a legend, sir. I mean, if brilliant financial mind, still familiar with the work of someone like Alex Gladstein. I feel like it's sort of a very rare thing to meet someone like yourself who really has that sort of dynamic and as broad of a perspective as you do. Very, very exciting. Please, yeah.
All you have to do is read.
That's
There's so many good authors in the Bitcoin space. I mean, Alex is great. Lynn Alden, I think,
yep.
is absolutely tremendous. I'm so
She's
thrilled
amazing.
how many
Yeah.
languages Broken Money's been translated
Yep.
into. Alan Farrington and Sasha Myers are, Bitcoin is Venice is one of my favorites, but there's so,
It's
so many
absolutely. Yeah.
good resources.
I love that yeah, it's one of those, you mentioned my two favorite books, so appreciate that a lot on a personal level. I guess my last big question here is, when do you get to meet with Secretary Besant and convince him of this idea here?
Uh, I would be so thrilled to have the U.S. government just give this a try. I listened to Secretary Besant's interview with Tucker Carlson. I also listened to his recent interview on the All In podcast,
Yep.
and I think that he's absolutely the right person at the right time for this
Totally.
job.
Hmm.
He's got such a such a good understanding, and I also think his heart's in the right place,
Hmm.
and I think his motivations are genuine.